say ask me this all the time. It's like, number one, why do you want to be a therapist? Don't you get sick and tired of hearing people whine all day? And I don't see it that way. That's not my experience. I'm working with people I really enjoy connecting with and really learning the nuances of their stories, watching them challenge the map of reality or the story they've told about themselves and their lives, and begin to consider different ways of seeing it. My deal is to just encourage people to be curious about it. Like
ADHD Rewired, episode 83. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. But first, let me thank our sponsors. Audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free download. Trial.com/ADHD Rewired. Trial.com/ADHD Rewired. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free audiobook download. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. I'm here in the virtual ADHD Rewired studios in Northern Illinois with my guest, Don Baker of Unpacking ADHD.com. Did I get that website right?
You got it, Eric. That is correct.
Right. So as usual, the way we start this, the interviews here, it takes much longer to get started than I want it to. We're having internet issues. And so, I haven't really done this much. I think I did it one other time recently. I'm not actually sitting not at my desk, but in my chair that I sit at with my legs are up, which you actually gave me the inspiration to do that after we decided we're not going to do video. We're just going to do audio.
Absolutely.
So we're comfy. We're here. But Don, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we will kind of dive into our conversation.
Sure. Hey, first, I want to say thanks for inviting me to be interviewed. This is a great opportunity. And when you and I first spoke, I think the thing that resonated most for me, Eric, was the fact, I think we both agreed that stories are probably the most powerful thing that we learn from, especially being ADHD. Mm-hmm. And so I really clicked with you when you mentioned that. You want a little history about me and what I do? Yeah.
So, tell us what you do.
So I am a licensed therapist in the state of Washington. I've got an office here in Seattle, right on Lake Union. Gorgeous, very nice. So it's been about 17 years I've been doing this.
And what got you into doing this? And by this, now do you specialize in ADHD?
I do, yeah. It is, I'll give you kind of the abbreviated version of it, but ultimately it's my own journey, my own process with ADHD that's really informed how I work with people, especially those of us wired with traits of ADHD. And so I received my own, it was a quasi-formal diagnosis in 1997. And it was a relief in a way, but I don't know if any of you guys listening have this experience. It's like, so, okay, what does that mean for me, right? In 97, my experience in Seattle, it might have been different in different parts of the country. There were very few resources for us. And, so part of my wiring is that when I see a gap or a need that needs to be filled, I thought, I am going to take this on. I'm going to work with my tribe mates, and I'm going to create the resources that I would want had they existed when I was diagnosed.
Now, you said that you were quasi-diagnosed. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, right? I was, so it's kind of a good story, actually. There's a magazine in Seattle called the Seattle Weekly. And in the old days, people would advertise on the back, including therapists. And I was looking around, kind of beating the bushes for resources for adults with ADHD, and there was a therapist advertising that she did that. Long story short, I ended up working with her. First, I consulted with her as a therapist, and then she and I actually started to do a little work. But she was the one who said, "Hey," because my partner had been diagnosed, by the way, prior to me, and there's no friggin' way I thought that I could be too. But she said, "I think you are, Don." So the quasi part is she sent me to a psychiatrist in a suburb of Seattle called Ballard, and it, kind of a traditional psychiatrist, right? You walk in and you have a 15-minute appointment. The first appointment was half an hour. At least in my mind, not long enough to really know me or know my symptoms, and therefore the word quasi. But nonetheless, I walked out of there with a diagnosis and a prescription.
And did he get it right?
I think so. Yeah, he did. And I was in a place in my life. The backstory before being diagnosed was I had been really involved in a 12-step program because I loved to smoke pot and get high and escape. And I was more or less a binge drinker. So I'd been sober for probably 6 years. And I had, when I was in
at the point of when you were diagnosed.
Yeah, it was about 6 years when I was diagnosed.
So you said you've been sober since 1989, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a whole complexity to the story, but what I began to understand was it was my untreated ADHD that was driving. I needed something, at least I felt this way. I needed something to calm me down. And for me, there's an internal restlessness I feel. I still feel it today, but nothing like I did then, and I understand it today. But so if I drank, it was more to relax, or if I smoked pot, I would describe it to my friends like it's the only time I can relax, right?
Mm-hmm. So it relaxed your mind, you were saying.
Yeah, physically, emotionally,
okay.
All sorts of restlessness, Eric. So anyway, I had.
Let me ask you this, because I know that I have many clients who will tell me that they smoke because it helps them manage their ADHD, and it's like I hear what they're saying, but I also know what the research that is out there, what the research says. Yeah. Well, how do you talk to your clients about that when they share with you that they're smoking pot to manage their ADHD symptoms?
It's a loaded question. I mean, it's a great question, right? I think what I'd say first is I don't judge. I don't have a hard line where you can't. And what makes it even more complex in Washington and in Seattle is we've got, marijuana is legal now. So there are pot shops everywhere, and they're high class, low class, and it's mainstream. So there's a variety of different venues, different stores that sell it. So it's really easy to get it, and that makes it more complex to have an opinion or to have a hard line with anybody, especially my clients. And what I know, I hear you. The research shows that it doesn't do us any good. I look at pot, I look at alcohol, I look at all the drugs and medications that people choose. I look at them, and I look at food, I look at exercise, I look at all the ways we can calm ourselves down and kind of enrich our brains. Pot and alcohol are two that really don't, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So rather than have a hard line about don't do pot or alcohol, it's more about, I have a belief about a more comprehensive treatment plan. It doesn't necessarily include those two things, but have you tried these other 5 things? And so I try to just educate people about their different options rather than don't do it. Say, why don't you try something else too? See how you feel with that.
Okay. So, I know one of the things that I would do with clients is have them really kind of try to discover how it's impacting them kind of on their own, by asking, them questions about, rating how productive they are during the week or their anxiety during the week, and have it kind of go long term, and see if they can really track it for a period of, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and see if they can go without for a couple weeks if they're able to, and see if
Yeah.
they notice any difference. Because one of the things that I thought was really, really interesting, at last year's CHAD conference, when they had the research symposium on mindfulness and marijuana, was how, a lot of people with ADHD, especially the inattentive presentation, are using it as in a way to kind of calm the mind. But what they found is that there's increased anxiety as to part of the reason why they're using, but then they
Yeah.
need more to
Yeah.
smoke more often to alleviate the anxiety. So it's at the moment decreasing or minimizing the anxiety, but it's actually creating a bigger anxiety problem.
Yeah. Oh man. And personally, I know that. And then professionally, I can see that too. So I appreciate the feedback on that. And I love the stuff coming out around mindfulness. I wish I would have seen that symposium. Sounds really nice.
I know you can get all of those, the audio for that on the chat website.
Yeah.
So that's a great resource to go through.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. And it's interesting. I look at ADHD, and I just wanted to. Can I pull you back to unpacking ADHD for just
Absolutely.
because
You can pull me in any direction you want to.
Okay,
We're on this ride together.
here we go. You got your feet up still?
I do.
Okay, me too. I wanted to come back to unpacking ADHD because it's my opinion that, and I've worked with hundreds of us, that what's really important for, at least for my clients to understand, is a little bit about the biology of ADHD and, what the heck is going on. And then why do we treat ADHD the way we do with either class twos or with food? What kind of an impact is that having on the brain? I find that is a real significant piece of learning for people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a foundation that they can build from. And I have played with food, I've played with exercise and all sorts of different things in my own life, and I realize how much relief I get from those things. So teaching people about the biology, and the first course of action is optimizing brain and creating a baseline. Not that treatment stops it's ongoing, in my opinion, for life, but you create
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more optimal baseline, and starting to look at strategies, structures, that kind of stuff becomes easier.
And when you say creating a more optimal baseline, what do you mean by that? Go into that a little bit more.
I've got an ebook coming out next week, and what we're looking at is the impact of food on our brain, right? And so what's fascinating to me is when you look at the different food groups like protein, carbohydrates, and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely to learn what's essential for the brain. The brain needs juice, brain needs food in order to operate, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, as an ADHD person, especially when I was young, I'm quasi-hypoglycemic, so my blood sugar would drop. And what made it worse was I would just forget to eat. It was almost like
totally guilty of that. And
right,
then I'm like
and
starving, and then
yeah, it's like I forgot I had to eat, and I don't know if you get this feeling. Do you? The bonk where your blood sugar kind of crashes and your focus, decreases.
Yep.
It's almost like peripheral comes in. You become a madman, right? I remember my grandpa used to reach for crackers. He always had some in his pocket. But so to me, that's like knowing what's going on there. And for me, the fix was to begin to look at what can I eat to sustain my blood sugar so I'm not a crazy man.
And so what do you do?
So there, basically, what I did is I took a class. I've taken a whole bunch of classes on nutrition, but there's a woman on Vashon Island here in Washington who does an amazing course. It's an elimination diet, but it looks at inflammation and not by not eating certain foods, why you have an inflammatory response and all this kind of stuff. But what I learned was the foods I was sensitive to, number one, but I also learned what types of foods are the best kinds of foods to eat. And I can eat a whole bunch of them. And really taking a look at what are the foods that make me feel the best? What optimize my focus and attention? For me, I found, what I keep in my office is a big bag of walnuts from Trader Joe's and avocados. Mm-hmm. And I'll just eat that kind of stuff. But I just feed myself all day long.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How about you?
So diet has always been one of those. So it's kind of a multifaceted area. I mean, I do a lot of high protein, cause I definitely noticed that it just helps me with my focus. I don't get that crash. I used to eat a bowl of very healthy cereal with fruit, and I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
And this was with like a pot of coffee as well. And I would fall asleep afterwards. And I started reading some stuff several years back about kind of protein and ADHD. I was like, well, I'll try it. Because it's with, I think some of my kind of training, and when I really started learning about ADHD, I really was focusing so much on what is the evidence, what's the really strong science say? And, when we compare that and we look at research design and we look at that kind of stuff in relation to food, it's not really there yet. So I think that there was a certain, almost bias to myself to be somewhat dismissive of some of the nutrition kind of science. Yeah. Which, and I've really been sort of, I don't want to say I'm shifting my mindset, but I'm re-looking at some things, because I think that just because, I think it is really important to understand what the science says and what good science says and what good research design looks like. All of that being said, I also think we have to understand the nuances that say, just because it's not, the science doesn't show it yet, doesn't mean it won't.
Yeah.
And so I think when it comes to things like, trying things with your diet, that's what it is. It's try things and see how you feel doing
Absolutely.
it. And, so for me, when I started experimenting with some different kind of protein shake recipes, and I noticed a pretty immediate difference. And so that was enough for me to change how I'm doing there. And as I'm learning more and more about it, I actually just had someone on recently on my podcast, Carl Piltz. I think his last name is. Don't you love the ADHD piece where you want to like mention somebody else that you just recently had on the podcast and you're questioning his last name?
You're in good company here. So I totally get what you're saying.
And he was talking about, because one of the reasons I reached out to him to be a guest in the podcast is I was listening to one of his podcast episodes. He has one all on nutrition, and just the way he was talking about nutrition in the brain was something that I was really able to connect with. If he wasn't like this extreme anything, it was really explaining how we need, you need to have certain, I clearly have to go back and listen to the episode, but it was
just kind of the macronutrients, the micronutrients.
Yeah, and the combination is not just about protein, but it's what do you eat with the protein to let the protein do its job. And I'm like, I need to really learn more about this. And it's sort of exciting because it's like I feel that for myself and a lot of my clients, I feel like I'm doing well managing my ADHD most of the time. But I always feel like I want to be doing better. And that's also sort of the ADHD, I think, mindset is that we can always be doing better. There's something that, we can improve upon. And so I do think that diet is part of that link for me that I want, I'm sort of excited about learning more information. And I think that there's more good science that is starting to show what is this actually doing for the brain.
Yeah, I love that. I love that process. And, there are a couple of things embedded in what you said. First, I love the enthusiasm you have for it, right? That's kind of who you are. But to me, there's kind of this developmental process to the unpacking, so to speak, of ADHD. And it's beginning to understand, beginning to increase the scope of what we're willing to consider and try. One of the things I believe, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I believe that, I do so many groups here in Seattle, and 9 or 10 individuals in the room at the same time. Everyone has some stereotypical common trait, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody in the room, but everybody is so different, yes. Right? So there's this variability and uniqueness, and I think that can become a little confusing and overwhelming, right? There is no cookie cutter answer for each one of us, and that's why I believe it's really valuable to try something and just see what it does for you. Especially when it comes to food.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any, like you mentioned walnuts and avocados? Anything that that you tend to stay away from?
I stay away from. I don't eat cereal or those type of carbohydrates much anymore. But one thing that I do love, and you and I were talking about this a few minutes ago, is chocolate. And I happen to do medication with my ADHD. One of the ways I know it's wearing off is we can be sitting downstairs watching a movie, and I get kind of sneaky when my meds wear off. Like, I don't know why I do this, but why I just don't grab the chocolate, right? But I start to construct this plan in my head, how I'm going to get up to the kitchen and get into the cupboard and get that piece of chocolate, right? Which I know my dopamine levels have decreased, and that's my fast track to amplifying dopamine, right? And plus, I love chocolate. So
I love how you said that you're kind of sneaky about it, because I can actually relate to that. I think it's really funny.
It's so bad. I feel like a teenager, right? It's all about getting it. It isn't necessarily about eating it. It's just like getting up to that cupboard.
Well, that's what a lot of the research on reward and dopamine is also shows, that it's not actually about receiving it. It's about the anticipation of receiving it.
Absolutely. Just like I'm a white rat, I swear to God.
So let's see. Where do we want to go next? Let's do this. Let's actually take a quick break, and then there's a couple other things I wanted to talk with you about, including, I know that one of your favorite questions, and I think my favorite questions are the same, but we're going to come and talk about that in just a moment. So we'll be right back. Support for this podcast comes from Audible. For a free audiobook download, go to erictivers.com/audible for a link for that free download and for some hand-picked recommendations. Go to erictivers.com/audible for your free audiobook download. Get a Zoom room. Go to erictivers.com/Zoom. I use Zoom video conferencing for the ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group. Zoom makes video conferencing fun and easy. Share your screen, collaborate with a whiteboard, record the audio and video. It's ADHD friendly. Go free or go pro, but go to erictivers.com/Zoom so they know that I sent you. That's erictivers.com/Zoom. We are back with Don Baker, and we are going to unpack ADHD a little bit more here. And you and I have a very similar favorite question, and that's the question of why. Mm-hmm. And you were telling me that you were really into Simon Sinek and his book Start With Why.
Yeah, I loved that.
When I first read that book and even just heard that title, I'm like, that's the book that I've been writing my entire life, because that's how I think.
Did you watch his TED Talk too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If you've not seen it, definitely check it out. It's definitely worth seeing.
It really is.
What do you recall from it that really connected with you?
Oh, I like his delivery. He's just energetic. I really appreciate that about him. But the piece in there that was really relevant for me was there's this thing about me that I'm incredibly resilient and energetic, right? And what's underneath the stuff that I've created in my practice is basically inspired by my curiosity and being inspired to learn more about my own ADHD. And I think some of my clients tell me this. One of the ways I can be effective as a therapist or as a group leader is that I think I have pretty clean boundaries. I allow everybody their own experience, but it's my energy that really gets them inspired. So it's my why, my curiosity, my inspiration, my interest in learning about the neuroscience, learning about the food, all the kind of things related to treatment of ADHD, that it's almost like sometimes they'll get caught in my vortex and come along for the ride. What it does is it incites and inspires their why. They're kind of encouraged. They feel more curious. They feel more inspired and interested.
So inside your vortex, you mentioned that you are a resilient person. Would you mind sharing with us maybe some of the things that you're currently kind of working on that
Sure.
maybe you're struggling with, that you're seeking answers for right now for yourself?
You bet. I have a tendency to take on too many things, and
you and I both.
you know that story, right? And so I can be interested in all sorts of things, and it can be, in my life, it's usually been a lot of physical stuff, whatever, windsurfing, skiing, snowboarding, all that stuff. But I'm also fascinated by people. And when I sit in my office all day, I get inspired. And so the thing that I have to manage most is managing how many things I'm taking on at one time.
How do you manage that though?
That's a great question. It's sometimes I do well, and what I think about is paying attention to what has my attention in any particular moment, and it's kind of moving around my life with this more mindful practice of, is this what I'm supposed to be doing right now? Or is this necessarily going to get me where I want to go? If I take this on, is this going to tip me over the edge and am I going to feel overwhelmed? I'm getting better at navigating that. I'm not perfect yet. But
for me, one of the things that, that I've been working on in this very specific issue, is really, before something, because I get excited about a lot of things, it's like, this project sounds great. This is exciting.
Yep.
Do I actually have the bandwidth for it? It's like my plate's often overflowing, and I keep, telling myself, well, I'll just get a bigger plate. And, except that doesn't really work. It's kind of like breaking the law of like time physics.
It is kind of skewing that just a touch.
And so, some of the things that have helped me that from the day-to-day stuff, I'm also finding to be helpful in some of the more the bigger term, longer term projects. And that's kind of going into that kind of metacognitive domain where I'm asking myself, is this what I want to be doing right now? Is this, is this my top priority for today? Yeah. And then looking at that in the realm of, the next 3 months and the next year. And I have different kind of planning kind of perspectives that I try to use. I'm definitely not there. I think in the last year, really since I started the podcast and been taking on more things, I kind of keep running up against this wall. And running into a wall hurts. And after, you can run into a wall so many times until you say, I got to figure out how to stop running into this wall.
Yeah. Yeah, and remember that.
Yeah, and that is the one of the tricks too, and it's part of what I have done when I have these kind of I kind of relearn these lessons. That's one of the challenges with ADHD is we don't integrate the lessons that we learn into our day-to-day behaviors.
Yeah, I love what Russell Barkley says. I don't I'm just paraphrasing, but it isn't that we don't know what to do. It's accessing what we know when we need it, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. So on the fly, to be accessing that meta cognitive awareness, like,
Mm-hmm.
does this fit? That takes practice, right?
Yes.
The other thing I was going to say real quick, Eric, is one of the things, and I wanted to ask you if this is true for you too. I love Tom Brown's book, Smart But Stuck. And what I love in there is the significant role that emotion plays in our lives as ADHD people. And for me, I've always had an abundance of optimism and enthusiasm. I don't know why, but I do. And so it's that modulation of the positive emotion. It's like in a particular moment, I can feel like, yeah, this is possible. I can take this on. Yes, this fits. I can walk out of the room where I made that commitment to myself. My life hits me. Everything else that I'd committed to, I remember. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh man, that positive emotion got me in trouble again. So it's almost like there's kind of a mindfulness I've learned to have around getting excited and curious. Not that I throw cold water on it, but more it's like it drives so many things for me. True for you?
Yeah, and as I was thinking about that, part of what I was thinking about is how that can work on both sides of it.
Totally.
Yes. I think that's something both as an entrepreneur and with just having ADHD, I think that we often struggle with this imposter syndrome. This fear of, it's being found out for how, it's when someone says, wow, you're so organized, you have all this stuff going on. It's just like, you have no idea.
Yeah. You are the ADD poster child.
Yeah. And, it's, so I don't know. I think emotions absolutely play a huge, huge role in it. It's what can keep me going on a difficult project. It can inspire me to persevere through difficult times. But even for me, sometimes I got hijacked by emotions occasionally. If there's a problem I'm having with somebody, if there's a misunderstanding, it's like my brain sometimes gets sort of stuck on that. And for me, that's where mindfulness has really been a huge kind of help in my life, is really getting curious and exploring and not trying to just push those uncomfortable feelings away. And, cause I think that most people do not have just this clean ADHD and that's it. We have other stuff going on too. And so I think it's, understanding the whole picture, because ADHD is a starting point. It's like you were mentioning earlier about, we all have these similar traits, but we also have a lot of different traits. And I think it's about really exploring self-awareness, and having an ADHD diagnosis is just a starting point. And what works for me might not work for the next person. And what I struggle with, you might not struggle with. And what I find easy, you might find difficult, and vice versa. And I just think it's so important to understand those nuances of kind of how we work and how we learn and how we think, and continuously ask why. So that's kind of where I come from, in the realm of emotion, and really understanding how we process, kind of all of our information. If I can go back for a second though, because I was mentioning before about, or I was asking you about, the thing that you're working on, and how you're working on that. And one of the things that I was, going to say was, for when I had that aha, so for you, it was, recognizing that sometimes your positive emotion almost gets you carried away.
Yeah.
For me, when I have ahas that I don't want to lose, and I want to be able to integrate that into what I'm doing so I can actually learn the lessons from my mistakes, is I actually put into my calendar times to review. I have a note in Evernote that I use that's just kind of my random occasional thoughts of lessons learned. But
that's really good.
Yeah. But what happens is a lot of people will have that, but then they never go back to it.
Yeah.
I schedule that for myself to go back to it.
And are you looking at it?
Not at the moment.
No, I mean, do you go back to it?
Yes, I was thinking you were asking me like, wait, are you going to ask me to read you
Yeah.
my very personal ahas and
Would you crack open Evernote right now? Take us to that
no,
notebook.
I'm not going there.
No, okay, okay. No, I
You
I
know
think
why?
that's
It's not
great.
because right now I'm sitting in a comfortable chair and that would require me getting up. That's truly
Okay,
my main reason.
okay, all right. That sounds good. No, I think one thing you use the word integrate, and
Hmm.
I think what I think is one of the shifts I made a while back was, and I think about this in terms of the process that we go through. By the way, I was sitting here thinking as I was listening to you, in a conversation like this, I really feel I love what you're saying, and so I'm having a million thoughts, and I'm inspired sitting here, and I'm also feeling positive emotions. So this is where I feel kind of on fire, engaged, and most focused, but also most inclined to impulsively want to go, yeah, me too. Right. But I just want to let you know, I just love your energy and your interest in uh, what you do with your work to bring this stuff to us. Right. I mean, it's excellent. I just think it's amazing. But, and I don't know for you, but for me, teaching stuff is the way I learn and integrate. And I was curious if the guests you have on, if you have that same experience where just listening to them inspires you start to make connections and integrate stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, thank you for saying all of what you just did and for sharing that you're noticing that desire to almost impulsively say "me too" through the because of the excitement. I really appreciate that kind of mindful awareness that you were sharing. Um, I too was having 1,000 thoughts as as you were sharing that, and which is causing me to wonder what the actual question was.
Oh, I was thinking that the podcasts. I've looked at the people you've interviewed. I've listened to some of them, and I can imagine for you it's inspiring, right?
It is. It
That
is. Yes.
just that you end up sitting there making connections too, and integrating and understanding stuff, and it becomes a process for learning for you too.
You know, that, and I mean, because I've absolutely learned a lot from a lot of my guests, but the thing that really I'm not even sure what the right word is to describe that people are trusting me to share their stories.
Yeah.
And, there's something almost reverent. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's the right word, but I feel humbled. I feel like it is such an honor to that people are willing to share their stories, because I think that stories, there's one thing about science. We can look at what the research says and, statistically speaking, oh, other people experience this too. But when we hear it through stories and we hear it through other people's stories and experiences, and, I get so many emails and things on social media from listeners just saying, thank you for, sharing this, or I heard, this guest talk about that, and I've had such a similar experience. And it was that to me, that's why I can't even imagine ever not doing this podcast,
Yeah.
because it's changed other people's lives. And, that is, that fuels me so much, and that fulfills me so much. Knowing that I'm making a difference in other people's lives, knowing that I am helping contribute to people not feeling like they are alone in this struggle. And it doesn't have to be so much of a struggle.
Absolutely. I have something written on my website of, you just said this. So the core of my why, the core of the why of my career is to connect others with facts about ADHD wiring and bring us together, bring this amazing tribe together. It's like, you kind of embody that, right? And what I hear too is it just feeds you as well. It's so great.
Yeah. It's really, it's it's almost like that feeling of it's like related to this feeling of love. I mean, it really is, where it fulfills you so deeply and immensely that, it's when I can be vulnerable myself and share with others and know that it's helping people.
Hmm. Yeah, just by being yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big lesson. Yeah, I think about the why in there for you, and it's great you get fed that way. Do people ask you this? They ask me this all the time. It's like, number one, why do you want to be a therapist? And don't you get sick and tired of hearing people whine all day? And I don't see it that way. That's not my experience. I guess I'm fortunate enough where I'm working with people I really enjoy connecting with, and really learning the nuances of their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And watching them challenge, I like to call it their map, the map of reality or the story they've told about themselves and their lives, and begin to consider different ways of seeing it, the diagnosis included. And how do I kind of integrate this understanding of this particular brain wiring into how to understand myself rather than pathologizing it, beginning to look at it kind of more neurodiversity model, like, it's like this uniqueness. It isn't all good, but it's a uniqueness. And rather than pathologize it and try to fix it, my deal is to just encourage people to be curious about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, what's going to light you up? What's going to shut you down? And understand and just be honest with yourself about both of those things. You had mentioned about that you have clients that will ask you, or people that will ask you about, doesn't it drain you to hear people, to do what you do? And the thought that kind of popped into my mind for that is, 97% of the people that I work with fill me up and energize me. And I'm aware of the 3% of the people that don't, that drain me. And I will have an honest conversation, and I sometimes will refer those people out. Because if I am not excited about working with somebody, then it is a disservice for me to continue to work with them. And it's one of those things where it's like, most people, not with ADHD, but just in the general population, if they love what they do, it's a wonderful life, right?
Yeah.
People with ADHD, I find that you have to love what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, it's not a luxury. It's to me, it's a necessity. And, and I know when I say that, I think about the person who maybe is really late to diagnosis and is struggling through most of their life. And, just imagine them maybe thinking, well, it's good for you. You figured this out early. And, I'm, 50 years old and I'm just figuring this out now. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's it's never too late to begin anew.
No, I agree. This is a second career for me. I went back to graduate school when I was 40, and I'm 61 now, and a young 61, by the way. But I absolutely agree with you. But the hardest thing about reinventing was just being new and dealing with the stimulation involved with that. But I hear you. It's never too late.
Well, Don, let's, I'm looking at the time here, and, couple things real quick. I wanted to find out, now you have some courses on your website. Will you just briefly kind of touch on those and let people know where they can kind of find out more information?
Sure. Yeah. There is what I have on the site on Unpacking ADHD. I've taken all the material I've developed over the years in the groups, in the life strategies and traction groups, and we've created something called the Core Series. And so we've taken the material that I've used in the in-person groups and put it online. I love it because we have fine-tuned it into it's a sequence of information and exploration that I'm watching people really get results with, and it's really hard to sell this, and it's kind of a two-dimensional thing. But I'd encourage you to, if you're looking for resources, to take a look at the Core Series. The other thing that I'm going to be doing this week is we're going to launch an ebook. We're calling it Brain Food. And we're going to follow that with an online class where one of the things I realized with my diagnosis, and I don't know if you'd agree for you, is I'm good at starting stuff, but sustaining practices, it gets kind of boring, and I don't like to do that, right?
Yep.
So I hear an amen. But we're going to start an online class, and that's going to promote sustainable dietary changes, not radical, but just to support better brain functioning. And
where can people find information about that? Just mention your website again.
You can go to my website, unpackingadhd.com. And you can look at the top of the page. You'll see online classes. There is a blog link. The other thing I want to do, I've done this in the past, is create a community, a free community of us where people can come and post questions and respond to each other. So I'd love to encourage people to come and join in that dialogue. And then if you're in Seattle, come and say hi.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Now, there is one more part of the show, and I've been kind of changing this because I was doing the random question round, but I've been getting bored of the random question round, so I've been kind of playing with other ideas here. But I still like the idea of just having a fun, still sort of random part of the show. And on a recent episode, I did something. I couldn't tell you which episode it was.
But you remember doing it.
But I did this thing where we were associating 3 words together and making up a story. Oh, I think it was with Maria Billing in episode 80. And so we would take 3 unrelated words and create a story based out of those 3 unrelated words.
Ooh.
You want to play?
You want to do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and do you pick the words?
I'm going to pick the words, and I haven't picked them yet, so they're going to be just whatever kind of pops into my mind.
Okay, I have to write these down, Eric.
I would do the same thing.
Would you? Okay. And do I build on your story, or?
Well, I'm going to give you 3 words, and you have to connect them in a brief story.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. As I'm looking around my office for ideas.
Mm-hmm. Legs crossed.
You know what? I'm not my legs aren't on the leg rest anymore. I don't even know when that happened. I looked out at my legs and I'm like, wait, they're not.
We could talk about that.
All right, here are the 3 things. They are. We'll go leg rest, gong, clock.
So I can start anytime.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in China, and how I know that is in the distance I heard a gong, but it was within the palace walls, and I was kind of curious, but I was a little intimidated by the guards outside. Of course, in those days, the Chinese, they beat everybody else, and they had the most intricate of clocks. And this one particular clock was hanging on the wall of the exterior of the palace, and I was in a place in this ancient city where it was a cafe, and they didn't call them cafes, but you get the idea. And I was kicked back just sipping on tea. This particular chair I was sitting in had the most intricate wicker leg rest that I had my legs up on. And so if you could picture this, I was sitting at a distance, kind of looking over at the palace, this intricate clock kind of glistening over there, and there were these repeated gong sounds.
I like it. I was closing my eyes and really imagining the whole scenario.
Oh, were you?
That was good.
Oh, thanks.
It's, this new game is a work in progress. It's
You think at some point there'll be parameters, or you're just going to not do it?
I have no idea. This is.
You like how it's going?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just going to let it evolve and let it sort of grow as it will. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it's okay. It's part of my work involves play, and this is a part of the show that's just play.
Mm-hmm. So you actually could put yourself there. Were you at the cafe with me, or where were you?
I was sort of seeing myself as you, and I was imagining myself in this. I think I was really imagining like I was in something that almost looked like a Starbucks, except with different chairs. And so I had certain things that were kind of vague, like had certain details. Other things were more vague, abstract ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the visualization of kind of the Chinese architecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. The reason I went there is we've been watching so many different movies and HBO series on different facets, different time periods of China. It's a current fascination.
Cool.
Love it. Yeah.
Well, Don, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with me. And
you bet.
Give us your website one more time.
UnpackingADHD.com. And shoot me an email if you have any questions about content or just to say hi. Ultimately, I'd love for you to get on and join the community, share your wisdom.
Don, thank you. And all the links to Don's stuff is going to be in the show notes.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to another episode of ADHD Rewired. And if you're new to the show, welcome to ADHD Rewired. We are more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. You could see a full outline of this and all other episodes with all the links and other resources mentioned during this interview at ADHDrewired.com. Help support this podcast by checking out my sponsors. I use Zoom video conferencing nearly every day, and so can you. Go free or go pro. But please, go to erictivers.com/Zoom so they know that I sent you. And you can get a free audiobook from Audible at erictivers.com/Audible. And next time you shop Amazon, use the Amazon search portal at ADHDrewired.com. A small percentage of your purchase will go to support this show, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. You can also support this podcast by leaving an honest rating and review in iTunes or Stitcher. This really helps other people find this show. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't just be a passive listener, be an active member of the ADHD Rewired community. We are on Facebook. You can like our page, but please submit your request to join our free and growing community. And don't forget to check your other inbox because I screen everybody before they come into our community. Looking for a coach? If you're still listening at this point and you answered yes, come to my website at ADHDrewired.com and schedule your free 20-minute consultation, or call me at 224-993-9450. Is your school, business, or organization hiring speakers? I provide fun and engaging presentations full of practical solutions that both educate and entertain. Hire me for your next professional development day or corporate training event. Go to ADHDrewired.com/talks. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.